Hi everyone, I hope everyone's having a great day. Haven't made a YouTube video in a while. Been busy with school and whatnot. But this video I felt was important because we are facing unprecedented times with, I just so flustered by this and passionate. I have to almost kind of like simmer myself. We are facing unprecedented times in our world with the issue between Russia and Ukraine. And most people aren't going to pay attention to this matter. In fact, I'm finding a lot of Americans, Europeans, not really paying attention at all. I'm very proud that we are doing something and that it is a big deal in the news. But I also feel like when it comes to the general civilian population, people do not care about these tragic events that happen unless it affects them. And it's unfortunate because these types of things affect us greatly economically. I need to be able to consolidate my thoughts here. So, first of all, we need to understand Putin's side of the story. We need to understand what are his motives behind trying to have Ukraine back and within the Russian regime. So let's go over that. I always believe in understanding the other side before you start arguing any other viewpoint. So from my little understanding, I'm not an expert. I'm simply just somebody who's been watching things on the outside from the news and talking to people on Instagram, really, from across the world. But from my understanding, Putin has a lot of passion with Ukraine and previous Soviet Union countries. And his mindset, he wrote in a paper, I think it was like 11,000 words or something like that, a very large paper expressing his opinions on how the collapse of the Soviet Union is the most tragic event in history. To him, I find that funny because what about the mass genocides and things that have occurred in history? No, the collapse of the Soviet Union, in his opinion, is the most tragic event that has happened in our historic time period on Earth. And to him, the birth of the Soviet Union, or really the strength of Russia, started in Ukraine, which is true. In fact, I think we need to recognize that Ukraine and Russia have so many common aspects. You know, the people tend to cross the border often and have families through Russia and Ukraine. And they speak both usually speak Russian. I think Ukraine has their own language at this point, and own cultural distinctions. But really the main difference between Ukraine and Russia today is their government and how their government runs. And Ukraine has a very far democratic perspective now and runs their government on a more Western viewpoint. Putin doesn't like that. In his perspective, Western civilization or Western democracy, or how should I say it, just political views or just the culture of Western civilization, such as the UK, many parts of Europe and the United States, are really flowing into previous Soviet Union countries that are now independent. And Putin doesn't like that because he believes that NATO's influence, which if you're not familiar with NATO, it's basically a group of a bunch of European countries that get together that agree to be allies, to protect each other in war, to protect each other economically, etc. And he is disgusted by that and thinks that especially the United States influence is spreading over to, what these previous Soviet Union countries were. Now, the Soviet Union, I believe, collapsed after the Cold War. I could be wrong. I am not an expert in this. From just economic instability and different opinions on government. I could be wrong, but from my understanding, that is my very general understanding of it. And, you know, there was just a lot of instability. And since then, a lot of these countries have thrived, like Ukraine's economics and everything have greatly improved the past few years, being in a democratic kind of viewpoint of government. But we do need to understand Putin's point of view and understand that the West influence on these Russian culture or like similar culture countries that used to be all combined to be the Soviet Union is upsetting to him. And it's, to him, just, it's aggravating, it's hurtful, it hurts nationality. It's unacceptable to Putin. And I understand how he's viewing it, and I can see that, but times have changed. And these independent, now sovereign countries are completely, now they're starting to have their own culture, their own language, definitely their own government, which is the big difference. And, you know, you just need to let these countries be, because this is a different time period. And there is a reason why the Soviet Union collapsed, you know, and this is just how it's formed. History progresses. And that's just something that Putin is not okay with letting go. And I think a lot of this revolves around power and control. It astounds me that it astounds me that people are like that in the world, but they are. People thrive from power and control and don't think about the general welfare of civilians. So let's get into this. I wanted to make this video because I want to educate people on the situation between Russia and Ukraine, and I think I've been following it through the very little knowledge that I am provided through on the news each night on YouTube. I don't even have cable. I just look up Ukraine on YouTube and look at the progressing events. And it's just tragic. There has been so many lies from Putin. Oh, we're not going to attack. We're just doing military exercises. Oh, we're just in the separatist area of Ukraine doing military exercises. We're not going to attack. And then last night, you know, there was missiles that hit the airport in Ukraine's capital, and shellings and things like that, alarms and everything went off. And he's like, this is just a military exercise. And this is Russia, purely defensive. Russia is defending itself from Ukraine forces because it's not allowing Russia to expand. This guy is nuts. He's dangerous. And in my opinion, he is a very dangerous man. And I hate to compare him to this, but I think he is a Hitler in the making. Not necessarily through concentration camps and through racism against Jews and basically people who are not of a certain German heritage or blood or religious standpoint, but in different ways, through manipulation, power, and control, and basically lies. He's a pathologic liar, and this is just absolutely, he wants this control over previous Soviet Union countries to allow Russia to be stronger. Now, Russia's economy is not doing well. I think somewhere they said the average Russian makes a certain amount of dollars per week, US dollars, and it was very low. I swear I saw like $300 a week or something, but don't quote me on that. I read that somewhere, and you know, when you read things on the internet, we don't even know if that's correct. Nevertheless, their economy isn't in their best state right now, and that is proven. And I think a lot of times Putin in particular, and the United States does this too, is they're pointing to basically other world issues, like Putin will point to the United States or NATO as an issue, and not necessarily evil, but the problem, Russia's problem, to kind of to get people in Russia to avoid looking at their own economic problems. Just like the United States, we look at other countries and other world issues to kind of digress from the issues that are happening within the United States. I think a lot of countries do this, and it kind of, you know, makes the people kind of just not notice things. that's happening within their own country. My biggest concern, and the reason why I'm making this video, is I'm concerned for the Russian civilians, I'm concerned for the Ukrainian civilians, and I'm concerned for everyone in the world, because I don't think people understand this. We are now in a different time where countries globally and economically depend on each other. I work with China every night for my own personal business for manufacturing. And we are so globally independent. Where the United States was in World War I and II was a completely different time period where a lot of things that we made were within our own country. We greatly depend on Russia for oil and many other products. In fact, I buy products from Russia, believe it or not. It's just a different world. Social media has made it a different world, and so much more. And the Russian people are not at fault for this. And you say, well, why didn't they stand up to their corrupt government? Well, it's not that easy. People who stand up tend to just disappear. And they just disappear. You got to get in large groups and mass together. And that's very difficult, because if word gets out that you're doing that, well, people start going to jail or just disappearing. So we just need to understand that we're not pointing fingers at Russia. That's not the way to handle things. We need to unite and think of just the well-being of humanity. And I feel so ignorant saying that, because that's just seeming not to ever happen. But the reason why I'm very concerned is, and this has nothing to do with Democrat, Republican, none of that crap. That's not what we're focusing on here. I think I'm focusing on the fact that I'm really concerned, because here's why. I'm speaking with people from Ukraine on Instagram and their concerns, and saying, why isn't NATO sending troops? Ukraine has no chance to stand against Russia in the amount of military power. They're going to have to either surrender or get squashed. Civilians are now bearing up arms to fight, and they're volunteers, etc. And people are now going down in the subways to basically have it as a bomb shelter and things like that. And it's just sad. People are terrified. This is their home. This is where their family, their livelihood, their job. And it sucks that in America, if it doesn't affect us, we don't care. And it does affect us. Our gas prices are going to raise by massive amounts, and the inflation is going to show in our country. And now we are just so globally dependent on trade that it's going to massively affect our economics. And people won't directly notice it, but it's kind of those things that happen behind the scenes that over time you're just like, what the heck happened to our economy? Our world relies on each other. My biggest issue with the whole situation with NATO is I'm trusting our government, which you know how that works, but I'm trusting our government to make the best decision, because they have experts in the fields of international relationships, economics, and just worldwide economics, etc. So I'm not an expert. I don't know what to expect, and I'm really worried that we may be making the wrong decision. And that comes with the place that basically we are letting this crazy man Putin continue his actions with little ramifications. And I say little ramifications because the economic sanctions that are put in place do not really affect Putin directly. It affects the Russian civilians, American civilians, etc. So people that get the hit off economic sanctions are people who are going to get gas, and people who are just trying to live their daily lives, which is Russians, civilians, and United States civilians. And it affects us. It doesn't really affect necessarily Putin's regime. It will in the long run affect him, but this man is so dangerous that I think we need to handle it full power now, because what we're showing Russia and other countries that are really big about power and control is that the United States does not want to intervene, or NATO doesn't want to intervene, because we don't want to start a war. Well, what's going to happen is you're going to allow these very dangerous people to start causing very ill will on people's lives. And it just makes me so sad to know that these Ukrainians are terrified for their lives for what is to possibly come. It's very dangerous, and this isn't a normal man you're dealing with. It is not a man that thinks for the welfare of others. He thinks of the welfare of himself and power and control, and we cannot forget that. I don't understand how someone could be like that, but that's just how it is, guys. People can be nuts, and we need to remember that. And I'm really scared that us not sending troops, NATO, I should say, into Ukraine to protect is going to be a huge issue. You're allowing Russia to spread. Not only that, we have sent millions and millions of dollars of weapons and equipment from the United States, not including all of Europe's, like Lithuania, Estonia, Poland, Germany. All of these countries have sent weapons to help Ukraine, and now they don't need weapons, they need people. And eventually Russia is going to take over Ukraine, and from what my understanding is, just like it did with Crimea. And those weapons, those millions of dollars in weapons and supplies is going to be in Russia's hands, which is terrifying, because that's just strengthening their military, because they have the numbers. And it's just like, why would you invest so much money? It kind of reminds me of what happened in the Middle East. But I'm praying that the experts in this field are going to do their best. I want to educate Americans on the very little knowledge I know from my time and commitment and passion into this, and just pray for the best. And I am living in a very comfortable state in my life. I have a job that I love. I have a roof over my head. My belly's always full. I have time to go to the gym, and I get to go to university and learn and pay off my degree with no interest. And that is beyond the biggest blessing. And I'm not going to be blinded by my perfect world with what's going on in the world. You know, it's like we have to think of other people, guys. We can't just be in our own little bubble. And I'm concerned, and I hope that this all makes sense and people are educated by it, and that I really urge people to stand up and talk about it. Because if we don't talk about it, it's just going to be stagnant, and then we're constantly trusting the officials of our government to handle it. But sometimes we need to work together to make the best decisions in our world, and we can't just always rely on a group of small people to do that, especially when, you know, their best interest, you know, there's like their best interest they're going to do what's in their best interest, not necessarily what's in the people's best interest, which is just human nature. So we just need to take all of these things into accountability. Sorry for the rant, guys. I am so distraught over this situation. My heart hurts. It hurts to me that feels like I cannot make a difference. But the only way I can make a difference is through social media at this point in time. So, cheers, share this video, give it a thumbs up, comment, help the algorithm. But most of all, talk about the issue. Do your research. Don't just watch this video. Do research. Look up information about this. Talk to Russians. Talk to Ukrainians on this beautiful global network of social media, and learn about people's different perspectives, and listen before you speak. And society will be better for that. Thanks, guys, and may the force be with you always.